What were the chances that on that day, in those very few hours, I was free diving at a spot in the middle of the Arabian Gulf on this tiny speck of an island? But I think that was, a sign that I was at that place at that time to kind of take the torch forward and keep working with protecting these animals.
And saving animals for once, is a good thing, because it seems that we're very good at killing them. Seen a lot of documentaries, and we've all seen a lot of horror that is happening. Pollution, you have climate change, you have overfishing.
I think those statements are out there to shock. If we're all doom and gloom, you're not creating any hope. You have to tell stories that are compelling. I think you need to inspire people to make small changes.
Anyway, it doesn't seem like it works.
Your Instagram feed is not going to save the ocean. What's going to save the ocean is you making a very small change in your life decisions. When I ask people then, they say, how can we help? How can we contribute? How can we? And then I tell them, well, start asking where your seafood comes from. Do you ask where your seafood comes from?
No. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Lulu. I'm thrilled to have a very special guest with us today, His Excellency Sheikh Fahim bin Sultan bin Khalid Al Qasimi. Sheikh Fahim is a member of the Sharjah government, where he leads the Department of Government Relations, building bridges between Sharjah and the world. Beyond his official roles, Sheikh Qasim is an avid marine conservationist and the co-founder of SeafoodSouq, a technology platform that is building traceability so that we can have transparency around the seafood supply chain. In this conversation, we're going to talk about Sheikh Fahim's deep commitment to protecting our oceans, how is technology enabling conservation, and how a moment of faith led him from saving a sea turtle to leading a global mission. We're going to talk about purpose and what it truly means to align innovation with our responsibility to protect the planet. Your Excellency, it's such an honor to have you on the show today.
For having me on the show, but please no titles today. I'm here just as Fahim.
Okay, noted, Fahim. How about we start with turtles? You're known as the Turtle Sheikh. How did that come about?
This is a story that I think is dear to my heart and something that I think was just a twist of fate, right? It's been a couple of years now that I've had this accolade of being the ambassador for turtle rehabilitation in the country. And while I've told the story of me saving this turtle, Farah, I think a lot of people haven't really understood the sort of circumstances that were around that event. It was COVID. There were very few things, we could do and places we could go. And there's this beautiful environmental reserve called Sir Air off the coast, really, of Abu Dhabi. But this island is part of Sharjah. As a free diver and an ocean advocate, I invited some friends that we take a sailboat and we sail over there for a couple of days. And we were free diving at the point where I saw this turtle that was struggling deep underwater, about 6-7 meters. And when you work in ocean conservation or you read about the oceans growing up, you know not to approach nature. You don't get close to this animal. You're in their home. But I knew something was wrong. And I said, if in an hour I come back and that turtle is still there, then maybe something needs to happen. Now, turtles can hold their breath for many hours. But when they're struggling, those numbers of hours are limited. They do need to come up and breathe air. And I came back after an hour and realized the turtle was in the exact same spot, still swimming very awkwardly underwater. So I decided to do something. And when I swam down, picked her up, swam to the surface, is when I realized that she was caught in fishing line. Couldn't actually bring her to the surface. So we were both holding our breath for quite a while underwater while I was cutting away the fishing line, and I brought her to the surface. And coming back to what I said about the circumstances, what were the chances that on that day, in those very few hours, I was free diving at a spot in the middle of the Arabian Gulf on this tiny speck of an island? And that's when I sort of realized that, I was kind of put there for a reason. I hate to be, very philosophical, but I think that was, a sign that I was at that place at that time to kind of take the torch forward and keep working with protecting these animals.
I feel it's more because you've like aligned your life's purpose with this mission of conservation and being there around the oceans. I don't know if it's just serendipity. It's almost like, as you said, you were meant to be there.
I think that I have a very privileged life, and you get to this age where you want to give back. You want to find something to do to make you feel like you're doing, some good for the earth or humanity. And there are so many challenges around the world. And when you have that very physical, personal experience where you are literally saving a creature, and then spending a long time afterwards cutting away fishing line from its fins and its flipper that was amputated because of the fishing line cuts. And then I sat there with my friends on the boat, nursing her overnight to make sure she was still okay before the boat arrived to take her back to be treated. It's pretty intense as an experience that, even thinking about it now, it takes me back to, wow, like it's almost, I don't believe that happened, but it did. And I've been very lucky that I've been given, once again, privileged to be given the opportunities to give back. Jumeirah Hotels with their Dubai Turtle Rehabilitation Program asked me to be their ambassador. The governments of, Dubai and Sharjah and Fujairah and Ras Khaimah, they've all been really supportive in allowing me to then, take that mission forward and kind of do it. And we live in a country where, you can put your hand up. You have that opportunity to say, hey, look, I want to give back. This is something that I want to do. Yeah. And the door's open for you to be able to sort of commit to that mission.
And that's important work because we're all human beings. We're also very connected to nature. I mean, nature is in our core. And I feel like the health of the ocean is also connected to our health as well, right? The ocean, whatever you give the ocean, I feel like it gives us back.
Yeah, I think 70% of the world is covered by the water. I always tell people to look up this map that you can find online. If you search the world according to a fish, if you were to live in the oceans, Earth looks very, very different in terms of where borders are. It's almost borderless. You just have coastlines that dotted around or traced around a map. And we're a coastal community, especially here in the UAE. A lot of people forget that the coastline, both on the east and the west coast, is something that has been a form of sustenance, food security in terms of seafood. It's been the economic opportunities through the pearl trade many years ago, and even today. If you think about, the industries that rely on the oceans, whether that be shipping, logistics, it's a huge part of our of our history, of our culture, of our society. So a respect for the ocean and maybe doing something for the oceans is something that you could say is very personal to us as Emiratis.
And saving animals for once, is a good thing because it seems that we're very good at killing them.
I think
it's important work.
Yeah, no, it is important work. I think if you look at people tend to, call me up and say, do you like all turtles? And, they show me tortoises from the land and they say, you love turtles. And I said, look, sea turtles are a little bit different. Sea turtles are critically endangered. The hawksbills that nest here, all species of sea turtles are endangered, largely because of human activity. So for us, the work with sea turtles is quite a specific need that we have. They're extremely important to ocean ecosystems. They are animals that don't make much sound, so we don't know when they're in trouble. If you want to sound a bit philosophical, I always say that I'm here to give turtles a voice and help raise the awareness around these amazing creatures.
The last maybe point on the ocean, what is it that draws you in really? I mean, other than, has it always been the conservation aspect of it, or is there something more about being on the water that draws you in?
I've been asked this a few times, and I've asked myself this a few times as well, and I haven't got the answer.
Okay,
but there are certain memories that come alive. When I was very, very young, I remember having this book. It was like an encyclopedia. Remember encyclopedias when they were a thing?
Yes.
And it was a children's encyclopedia. And I was drawn to one that had a lot of information and a lot of pictures of the underwater world. And it was just, completely foreign and just majestic and captivating. These creatures that live under the sea, and it's so foreign to us, right? But then I will admit that I was scared of the ocean growing up for a little bit. I wasn't a kid that was running on the beach, at a very, very young age. The sea was, be careful, your parents, be careful, don't run into the sea without an adult there. But then when I was, when I turned about 11, I remember this. I grew up in Dubai, in Jumeirah, and I was walking down the beach and I saw these guys on these boards riding waves. And I just went, wow, that looks like the coolest thing in the world. I want to try it. And I went, and it was a kid on my bus, and I bought a surfboard from him. And the next day I just swam out and paddled, and it took me years to learn how to surf. There's no lessons here. We didn't have the surf house,
Yeah.
And I just paddled out and then rode my first wave. And I think I remember that wave. And I was maybe like 12 or 13. And when you're on a surfboard and you're standing up and you feel the power of the ocean, that was it. That was, I think, the turning point. And then you become, as a surfer, you become very aware of your surroundings. You become very conscious that you're not in your usual environment. And then you want to learn. And then that's
dangerous as well, right? There's a bit of adrenaline there.
Yeah, look, there are moments when you have to. That's a personal choice of how far you take those situations. But you learn how waves work. You learn where the power is and where it isn't. You learn to hold your breath if you get stuck in a situation that's tough. But then you also learn how amazing sharks are and why you really shouldn't be afraid of them. How unbelievable the underwater world is. And then you suddenly realize that the underwater world is also under threat. It's largely under threat because of human beings. And I think that, when you find this connection to the ocean, however it happens for anybody, it's something that you can't just walk away from that and say, I really like the ocean and that's it. I feel at peace, when I'm surrounded by water. I'll give you one last example. We were sailing on that trip to Sirbon, where I saved this turtle, Farah. And I remember the first sort of part of the trip where you just lost sight of land. Mm-hmm. And 360 degrees around you, it is just water. Open expanse of the sea. And I've done this with a few people. I sail as well. So two reactions happen. People really get scared, or they finally feel at peace. Mm-hmm. And I'm the latter.
Trying to think. I think I'd be the former. I think I'd be super scared. Yeah. I don't know. I find water is very relaxing, but I also find it quite dangerous as well. Have you had an experience with sharks?
I have, yeah. When I was 15 years old, maybe 14, was my first experience snorkeling with blacktip reef sharks. And we were chasing them, and they were swimming around us.
These are small, right?
About the size. I mean, the biggest one was about the size of me at the age of 14. I'm not a very tall person, so yeah, they were small sharks. But yeah, I remember swimming with sharks my first time.
Yeah,
a huge amount of respect for them. You keep your distance. Don't get in the water if you know they're there. And they're amazing creatures. They're apex predators of the oceans. They are, them and orcas, and you just respect them, and you realize you're in their space. Mm-hmm. There is an irrational fear of sharks that exists in this world.
Why?
Because of Jaws, because of the horror stories, and the.
Well, they do attack.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I have a friend of mine who lost a leg to a shark, or an acquaintance, I should say. He's not a friend, and he tells the story. There are certain situations people put themselves in. The number of shark attacks in the world are so small. Statistically, it's irrelevant. But they are, they make the news, and everybody then
they make the news.
They make the news, and then they create this irrational fear.
Yeah.
Of sharks in the water. I have friends that scuba dive with, hundreds of hammerheads in the Red Sea, and nothing happens.
Nothing happened.
Most of the time. I'll tell you one story. We were sitting with a friend of mine who's a professional surfer, and we were talking about this, and a friend, my sister-in-law, asked him, aren't you afraid of sharks? And he said, the sharks are always there. There is no fear, and I'm confident if you have spent time in the sea, you have been around sharks. You just might not have seen them, And if you can see the shark, he wants you to see him, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have this. I have a big awareness of the fact that there are sharks around when I'm free diving, when I'm surfing. But I don't sit there thinking that I'm going to be that 0.0001% chance, and that shark is going to come and just for no apparent reason come and take a bite. It does not make sense.
Yeah. Well, and if it happens, then maybe it's meant to be. Going back to fate.
Going back. It'll be a very fateful end for Fahim Al-Qasimi. Yeah. Love the ocean, eaten by a shark.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it never happens.
Inshallah.
Well, I mean, speaking of the oceans, the oceans are getting hammered like from all directions, right? You have a lot of pollution, you have climate change, you have overfishing. I mean, how bad is it really?
I think it's really difficult to say how bad it is. I'll give you an indication of something a very renowned ocean conservationist said to me recently. The oceans are extremely important to our planet, to the health of the planet. The oceans are important because they feed a third of the world. The oceans are important because we transport on them. They help regulate the climate.
They cool the planet.
They cool the planet. I mean, they're part of weather systems, right? And I had asked him the exact same question you asked me. How bad is it? Have we gone too far?
Yeah.
And he said to me, Fahim, when I started, he's a little bit older than me. When I started, there were less whales in the ocean than there are today. There was a massive issue with people hunting whales. And he said, 100 years ago, there were less whales in the ocean. With the work of, charities and the community and regulation and governments, there are more whales in the ocean today than there were before. Now, if that isn't a glimpse of hope, that it's not too late to fix the issues, then I don't know what is. And that's the way I think about it. There are a multitude of complex challenges dealing with ocean systems. And let's go through them. Plastic pollution, predominantly caused in rivers. The problem with our ocean is not caused in the ocean. The plastic that flows into the ocean technically comes, from what I've read at least, starts off in river systems that flow out to sea.
Okay.
Right? It's not that a whole bunch of people are standing on boats and throwing plastic into the ocean.
Aren't they? Because I thought
They predominantly start in river systems. So it's a land issue that we have to solve, right? So yes, pollution is a very, very big issue. And we can solve for it. I think the ocean is resilient. I think the planet is resilient, and it'll find a way to heal itself.
I think we're going to have to edit this out.
Why?
Because I think if people hear the planet is resilient, they're like, okay, let's dump some more.
No. It's not. I wouldn't say no. I don't think we have to stop doing what we're doing. The planet will heal itself. I think if we make the right decision, say it's not too late to start making a change. I think the doom and gloom approach to planetary conservation or the Earth, environmental conservation and protecting the Earth. If we're all doom and gloom, you're not creating any hope.
Anyway, it doesn't seem like it works.
Look, I'll give the example of turtles. Nobody will ever see me post pictures of turtles that are hit by boat strikes or dead turtles trying to shock and awe people into doing more. I don't think that works. I don't think it's what people want to see. I think you have to tell stories that are compelling. I think you need to inspire people to make small changes. And another ocean conservationist that I know also said, you don't have to be the perfect environmentalist. What we need is the entire planet to be imperfect environmentalists. Everybody to make small changes. It'll actually make a change.
Yeah. So
that's plastic. I think overfishing is something you mentioned. I'm involved in that with a technology business that we started called SeafoodSouq, where we identified the biggest issue we have today is illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing that exists around the world. And you're asking fisheries that sell their products to distributors that sell their products to other distributors that eventually end up in hotels and restaurants or supermarkets to make sure what they buy is not illegal or unregulated. How do you do that? You need to start building tools, and quite specifically cost-effective tools for emerging parts of the world to be able to build that traceability. So we started the business 6 years ago with the hypothesis that traceability is that precursor to having more transparent and sustainable seafood supply chains. And we've worked really hard at taking that technology from the UAE to the world. And I think there is an increasing push from consumers, increasing push from businesses and regulators to finally address it.
Yeah.
I'll ask you a question. Do you ask where your seafood comes from?
No. I mean, I look in the restaurant, no. in the supermarket, you don't have much info. You can see if it's organic or not organic. Obviously, if it's like salmon, if it comes from Scotland or where else it might come from. But there isn't much information, I think.
I think with salmon, it's a farmed product.
Across.
Yeah, you've never probably eaten wild salmon in your life. A lot of people don't appreciate that. It's all farmed
But
product.
it says like sometimes on the sign, like Scottish wild salmon.
Yeah, it's because it's grown in Scotland.
Okay.
In a farm.
But it's not wild.
The best one is, no, it usually won't say wild. It'll say Atlantic salmon. And people think it comes from the Atlantic Ocean and is wild. But Atlantic salmon is just the sort of species that it is, that they're growing in farms. Half of the fish we eat today comes from farms. And half of it comes from wild caught. It's like fishing from the oceans. And we're laser focused on that 50% that is fished around the world and providing tools to help you as a consumer. If you're sitting in your favorite restaurant, if you're in the supermarkets and you want to make a conscious choice that at least this has been product that has been regulated, that you have that choice. You have the ability to make that choice.
So you focus purely on the fish that is not farmed.
We can provide the traceability tools as well. I think one of the things, if you're watching this right now, think about how you consume seafood. By the time you eat seafood, it's usually in a form that's so far removed from its original state, right? Think about it. You have a little fillet of fish on top of, a bed of, some beautiful potatoes or whatever the case may be. Now, you're asking to link that small piece of white fish back to the original species of where it was caught and where it came from and which boat it was maybe caught on and so forth. It's a very, very complex, difficult supply chain. We believe with technology, you can actually achieve that. I know you can achieve it with technology because we've done it. We have one of our digital products is an audit that helps restaurants and hotels and supermarkets stress test their supply chain. With one recent test with a hotel that will remain nameless, they found out that 50% of their seafood product had the country of origin changed.
Wow. And why would people do that? Why would they change the country of origin?
There are price differentials quite a lot with where countries of origins are. Turkish sea bass is a much more value for money product. Greek sea bass is significantly more expensive per kilo.
Significantly.
Yeah, and it's very easy when you actually look at that fish. If I was to put a sea bass in front of you, could you tell me if it comes? It doesn't have a passport.
I wouldn't know what a sea bass looks like, to be honest.
The point is that it doesn't have a passport.
Yeah.
Our traceability tools give that fish a passport.
Yeah.
And allows hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, catering companies to think, well, now I can at least understand where the product is coming from. We create a fair, transparent space for the good actors in the supply chain, the great distributors, the people that are really being honest and bringing in great product to sell those to their customers.
So what else don't we know about fish that we're eating? I mean,
one interesting fact, I haven't talked about this much, is that there's a lot of great branding in fish. A lot of people don't appreciate that there's a lot of branding exercise. Beef is beef. And then beef went through a fantastic branding exercise with Black Angus, right? And then you'll usually know which country it came from. Or Wagyu. I mean, Wagyu is really a different product. And it's, very, very fascinating exercise in developing consumer behavior for buying protein. Chicken, we're still at the organic, not organic stage. I think that's where sort of chicken is. Seafood is an extremely fragmented, extremely diverse product category. So have you had Chilean sea bass?
Yes.
Yeah, Chilean sea bass is not a sea bass.
Okay.
Chilean sea bass is a brand name for usually something. Usually Chilean sea bass is Patagonian toothfish, which if
toothfish.
Yeah, it's called toothfish. And if you Google the picture of Patagonian toothfish, you probably wouldn't eat it. It's a great eating fish. It's just not very pretty.
Okay.
It doesn't look like a fish you would usually eat.
So a Chilean sea bass is not a sea bass.
Chilean sea bass is not a sea bass.
Okay, so for everyone that's watching, that's going to a restaurant and ordering Chilean sea bass.
It's called Chilean sea bass, but Chilean sea bass is a brand name. And a fantastic brand name. And people should be eating more diverse fish. We shouldn't just be eating the salmon, the sea bass, the sea breams that we eat. I'm a big advocate for local fish. A lot of people here don't appreciate how important our local fishing industry is here in the UAE. And we're, inshallah, by the start of 2025, going to be announcing some pretty big projects across the United Arab Emirates with traceability in the local seafood supply chain. The local seafood here is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I would ask anybody that would be punished by having me cook for them. But I make a fish and chips with shari. It's called pink-eared emperor fish is the actual scientific name for it, but the local name is shari, and I make fish and chips out of it.
Uh-huh.
You have the fish and chips. You wouldn't care what the actual, it's not cod or haddock from the UK.
Yeah.
There are ways of cooking. A lot of our local sea bream. We have a local sea bream, which we call faskar, which is a sea bream local to the Arabian Gulf. At certain times of the year, when fished sustainably, can replace your Greek or Turkish sea bream, in a heartbeat. So I encourage people quite a lot to ask your local fishmonger when you're buying fish before you go for the thing.
Yeah.
Ask what's local and what's come in fresh. Just yesterday from the local seafood markets, and try and learn. And online today, you'll find all the ways to cook the local Emirati fish, and they're fantastic.
I'm trying to think if I've ever bought some local fish.
Challenge for you, Lulu.
Probably not.
Challenge for you, Lulu.
Yeah.
Buy local fish.
Well, I mean, you have to go to the fish market, right, to get it?
No, all the great retailers here will have some local products available.
I met, I think his name is Rami, the founder of Dibabe here, which I found was pretty interesting, that they were grown here locally as well.
Yeah, the local oysters. That's Rami is one of the people that actually inspired SeafoodSouq back in the day. He was a big inspiration to the start of the business, because it was a conversation with him that actually sparked the idea. He was building at the time, this fantastic farm, growing this fantastic product, a local oyster.
Yeah.
And him and I were chatting through the challenges he had with traceability. His product was being sold as French oysters. Because French oysters commanded a higher price.
Yes.
And he wasn't seeing the economic upside. And the other side was he wanted to build a brand. He wanted people to appreciate the really fantastic, healthy oysters that are, very briny, very meaty. You can almost taste the Arabian, not the Arabian Gulf, sorry, the Gulf of Oman, because they're grown on the East Coast. You can almost taste the salinity in them.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing product. He basically said, I wish I could show more transparency and traceability in what I was doing. And we thought, okay, great, let's start. He then went on to fantastically market his product, and I think they're known now.
They've done a great job, I think, marketing Dibabe.
Indeed, and wish him all the success with that, and hopefully more projects that he does in the future.
Yeah,
watch this space. So I think creating a local brand was extremely important, and for us, we said, okay, well, why can't we do this for the global seafood industry?
Yeah.
And now there's 6 companies in the world that do it. Most of them are in the United States, and we're the one fighting the good fight. The Emirati company, the UAE company that is building technology for the world from here.
Yeah. So how does it work, Fahim, this technology? So you talk about traceability. So how does it effectively work?
So I'll give you a very simple supply chain that we could show today. You have maybe a desire to make a tuna sandwich. If you were walking around your local supermarket, I won't name names, but you're walking around your local supermarket and you saw a can of tuna. Imagine a world where you could scan that can of tuna, a QR code, where it would bring up this can of tuna was packed, I'm going to give you an example, most likely somewhere in Southeast Asia by this particular company on this date. The tuna that went into that can was actually caught on a boat called, I don't know, let's call it, Cape Horn's Majesty, right? That's the name of the actual vessel that caught that tuna. And the reason we know that is because the skipper of that boat had a digital tool in his hand, in his mobile phone. There was a digital logbook that logged where he caught that particular tuna. And that boat ended up landing its fish, let's say in Cape Town, to a company called ICV Africa, which covers about 60% of pole and line caught tuna. Pole and line caught means they don't use nets.
The what, sorry?
Pole and line caught tuna.
Pole and line caught tuna.
Yeah,
okay.
So what that means is there are no nets that don't hurt turtles. This is one-by-one fishing. Okay. Very sustainable way of fishing tuna, very regulated. And then ICV Africa, this company, sells that tuna to somebody like a Thai Union, right? Thai Union is one of the largest fish companies in the world. They make John West tuna. And Thai Union, bought that.
So John
tuna.
West tuna is done by a company called Thai Union
yeah, it's
in
one of their
Thailand,
brands.
I assume.
They're headquartered in Thailand. Yeah.
Okay.
So imagine
Interesting.
that supply chain could be totally tracked. I'll tell you something today. The boat that we're talking about already uses our digital logbook. And ICV Africa already land all of their seafood using our traceability tools. We have a fisheries management dashboard that we built for them, that they license from us. And then that tuna that is then sold to Thai Union is sold on our platform, where we can trace the boat that it was shipped on and all the logistics behind it. Now, all it'll take is for us to work with a company like Thai Union to digitize the last 2 steps. And I've given you traceability across the entire seafood
which is
supply
basically
chain.
shipping from them to the supplier here.
From first the processor, so how the tuna was then processed, and then from there, through the rest of the supply chain. And I think that for me is totally available. In technical terms, what we're building is a digital infrastructure for people to communicate across an industry. And that digital infrastructure requires a transparency and verification of information. That's what we do a lot of. And the other one is interoperability. Unless we control every node on that supply chain, well, how do we collect information from other actors along the way? How do we have the data inputs? How do we make sure that the same language that we're using in terms of talking about species or talking about critical tracking events? And Osama, our CTO, is just an absolute rock star when it comes to this stuff.
When you can you take me back to the first step, because I didn't understand how it works?
Sure.
You said it's like a digital logbook. So you fish the fish.
Yep.
And then what do you do?
So
you take a photo of it?
No. So
put a barcode on it? Like what happens?
The tuna industry is extremely regulated, depending on which body of ocean. So you have the Indian Ocean has its own tuna regulations. The Atlantic Ocean has its own tuna regulations. And this is done by multilateral organizations to protect these species, because tuna are migratory. Fun fact, they don't stay in one place. Therefore, they don't belong to one country. It's not one country's fish stock.
Okay.
So that's why it's very regulated. For example, for the tuna that's fished off the east coast of the UAE and Oman, it's the IOTC, the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, that actually manages that.
So this commission, since you mentioned it, I mean, what does it do? It says you're allowed to fish that many
Correct. There's
tuna.
certain catch levels. There's certain regulations around which species of tuna, how you deal with licensing bluefin tuna catching and things like that. So there are certain regulations.
And
that
when,
are required.
I would assume, right? When
Correct,
you can fish it.
In season and out of season. Previously, in South Africa, where we worked, where we've digitized about 60% of their industry, they had very large pieces of paper where they were literally filling in by hand because they needed to submit these documents to the government. And Michelle, who runs ICV Africa, said to Osama, we were just trading her seafood on SeafoodSouq and trying to provide traceability. Said, Osama, I'm really struggling. Our fishers, are still working on paper and pen. And Lulu, think about, being on a boat off the coast of Cape Town in South Africa, waves and you're trying to write with a pen and paper on these massive A3 sheets, your logbook. I need to register how much fish I've caught.
Yeah.
So what Osama did was build a digital logbook where you can just literally on your phone, put in the amount in, regulate the bait, because there's a lot of regulation and information required, and built a very easy tool for these skippers to use.
So it's not a passport per fish.
No, it's per lot.
Per lot.
Per lot. It depends on the actual species.
So I fished, I don't know, 50.
50 tuna.
Yeah.
This is the estimated kilo. This was the species.
Okay.
This was the location I caught them, because location is very important for tuna. Then that fish is landed.
And how do I know
Africa.
it's that fish from that lot that went into the Thai company, for example?
Well, I won't be able to tell you exactly that kind of tuna, but it'll actually be able to get it down to the lot, because the certain amount of seafood, certain type of tuna size and so forth will end up at a factory. And then you should be able to track that by 100%. You should be able to track a lot all the way back to the boat.
Okay. So you're providing basically, who's your client today?
Today, our clients are fisheries, right? Sometimes the governments that regulate those fisheries. What that means is...
so fisheries is...
commercial fishing vessels, artisanal boats. So in the UAE, we have artisanal boats. We don't have commercial fishing.
What's an artisanal boat? It's a boat owned by a person?
A boat owned by a person, usually
not a company.
20, 30 foot.
Okay.
They do a fishing trip that lasts a day and comes back and lands their product. A commercial vessel is something that is, 40 meters, catching a huge amount of quantity and so forth.
Yeah.
The people that collect that fish which are landing sites, is what we call them. Landing site could be a fishery like ICB Africa. Here, it's one of the fish markets, for example.
Okay.
The Dubai fish market, Sharjah fish market in Souq Jubail we have in Sharjah. We'll work with them to provide them the tools to make sure to build the traceability at that landing site.
From their point onwards?
And then from the boat to them, and then from their point
even
onwards.
from the boat to them.
Right. If the boat owners have the log books, and then the landing sites have the fisheries management tools that we have, then they will use those. And then when they're sold and traded, we have a digital trading desk, and that monitors all of the logistical information. So we work with seafood traders, people that buy and sell seafood. And then at the end of the supply chain, with our audit tools, we work with hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, anybody that procures enough seafood that wants to stress test and double check that their supply chain is as transparent as they want it to be.
So I'm trying to think from a customer standpoint, like as me, for example, or any customer that eats seafood. Why do I want to know this information?
Number of reasons.
Okay.
And if there's one thing I ask your audience to do is to just ask where your fish comes from. Anybody that's been for dinner with me hates going to dinner with me because I get quite, let's get borderline obnoxious with it. But when I've sat in restaurants across the world, and they'll say, sir, here's your prawn salad. And I'll say, where are these prawns from? And the waiter will look at me dumbfounded.
Of course.
A little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't you want to know?
Yeah.
Personally, as somebody that likes to think they make ethical choices in life, how do you know that that's come from an area that isn't overfished? And you are now contributing to it? Second, how do you know that slave labor wasn't used on that boat? How do you know it's actually prawns? I mean, prawns look like prawns, but there are situations where people have falsified fish. Sometimes you think you're eating tuna, it's a different product, one that could harm your health. I think you have a right as a consumer to ask. If you're eating food and not asking where it comes from in this day and age, I think you need consumers like yourself and everybody listening to this need to start asking that question because it's completely your right. I won't go into this too much, but there's a discussion in halal fish. In the Islamic faith, halal doesn't apply to seafood, or anything that comes from the ocean is halal. But the minute you start farming seafood, really depends what you feed the fish. If you are feeding a fish that's grown, pork, is it still halal? Big ethical question. Well, how do you prove that? Prove it to me today. I am a part of the halal customer market. I want to know whether or not this fish has been farmed ethically. Farming, if you go into the farming side, there are good farms and there are better farms. I'll leave you with this thought. There is a hierarchy in proteins. We care a lot about our beef. We live in the UAE, where you are given the choices in the supermarkets, right? You walk in and there's flags next to every product. And we all have a little bit of bias, right? My wife is from New Zealand. Forgive me to all my Australian friends. I don't come home with Australian beef or lamb. I have to come with the New Zealand, product because, there's a bias in there. And it's very, very prevalent in beef. A little less so in chicken, right? And if you think about, the places that our chicken comes from, it comes from local chicken.
I don't want to know where it comes
Spain, or, but people then necessarily, European buyers have a natural bias towards trusting, European regulations on this sort of stuff, right? When it comes to seafood, in the hierarchy of proteins, it's right at the bottom. People don't ask questions. Seafood is scary. Seafood counters are intimidating. You just say, okay, we're going to have fish tonight. That looks like a good fish. Pick it up and take it home. Especially the supermarkets here that are great. They'll give you all the information you want to know about it. I'm just encouraging you to really ask and put seafood a little bit higher up in that hierarchy of proteins.
I actually feel that seafood consumption has picked up a lot. I mean, people tend to think that seafood is the healthier protein, right? I mean, chicken, God knows how the chicken is grown. And we've seen way too many documentaries that show the horror of how chicken are grown. And actually, there's a guest coming in very soon on the podcast who's doing plant-based meats, and he used to work at a chicken farm before, and he was just, telling me some stories about like how chicken is grown, which is disastrous. I
think there's one thing to know about with seafood is that a third of the world needs seafood as a primary form of income or protein.
So these are like local, fishing communities, right?
Correct. They will fish because
eat what they
money.
catch.
Yeah, eat what they catch and also sell what they catch to make money.
Yeah.
So seafood is not going to be replaced by alternative proteins. I'm telling you that today.
Yeah.
I have a very clear view on I don't think plant-based stuff or alternative proteins.
We don't want a plant-based piece of salmon, do we?
No, people have tried to do it, but I just don't think it's going to solve what I stand for.
Yeah.
I appreciate, some people are working on it and it's great science, but it's not going to save the oceans.
Yeah.
Right? The other side, to your point about seafood consumption is going up.
Yeah.
The UAE has got the highest consumption per capita in the world.
Really?
Yeah, 26.5 kilos per person per year.
Okay.
That's true. I'm going to make some assumptions here. This is not a lecture. This is Fahim just sharing ideas. I think it's based on three things.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, on a per capita basis, we're a small country. So therefore, the statistics are skewed. Number two, the cultures that exist here. If you think about the large amount of people from South and Southeast Asia here, seafood is a cost-effective protein that is very prevalent in their diets, right? If you think about the Southern Indian diet, if you think about the Filipino, fish is a great source of protein that's prevalent in their cooking.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the third reason is that we're a tourism hotspot. When do you eat the most amount of fish? When you go on holiday by the beach, right? And if you think about these, huge amount of tourists coming to the UAE, you don't go on holiday to order, the salads or eat chicken, right? When you're on holidays, when you order your salmon or your lobster, right? You eat your lobster, you eat your prawns, you eat your salmon, you have your oysters. So I think those three factors skew us to being one of the highest seafood consumption per capita in the world. Yeah.
But again, that's why I guess it's very important to know where that's coming from, because the consumption is high.
I think anybody eating anything, look, once again, what a privilege to ask, right? Not most people in the world are just happy that they have a meal, right? And I think a lot of people in the world would love to have the meals that we have. So let's approach this with a certain amount of privilege, that the ability to ask where your food comes from is already a privilege. Yeah. With that privilege comes a responsibility. With the consumption that we have, in a prosperous nation like the UAE, I think that's why I talk about, with that privilege comes the responsibility to at least be sourcing ethically. Yeah. For your own health as well.
I'm still in my mind stuck on John West being produced in Thailand.
No, it's owned by a Thai company called Thai Union. John West Tuna. They own the brand. Great company. But one of the largest seafood companies in the world. But the first thing John West committed to, why I love them as a company, is they're the first movers in sustainability.
Oh, really?
They were the first ones to really attack the issues of people were worried about dolphins being harmed in tuna, in the tuna industry, right? Dolphin-free tuna, right? We're not killing dolphins or there isn't dolphin meat in this tuna can, right? And how do you prove that traceability and that transparency? So, yeah, I think
good to know.
Yeah,
so I think people would feel a bit better about buying John West, because I buy it like quite a bit, obviously, from the supermarket. So
yeah, great brand.
Interesting. You spoke about dolphins. So I mean, obviously, we have a huge issue with bycatch. I'm sure everybody who's watching this has probably seen Seaspiracy on Netflix and how these massive nets are just thrown to the bottom of the ocean. What is it called? Trolling? No.
Yeah, there's trolling. There's long lines. There's different ways of fishing. I mentioned pole and line tuna earlier. Which is more
so you said there's quite a bit of regulation, right, in the oceans in terms of what you can catch and so on. How does that happen? So
look, the way that I look at ocean conservation.
So this is called bycatch, right?
Bycatch is anything that's caught that's above and beyond what you are actually looking for. Right?
Yeah.
Turtles are one of the worst things you get in bycatch. Right? A lot of turtles die in net-based fishing, right? In trolling
I think they end up throwing them, but when they throw them back, they're like injured, hurt, or dead.
Correct. But let me give you a question. There's somebody that has a commercial fishing vessel that uses net-based fishing and catches a tuna. And then there's our partners in ICV Africa that have pole and line caught tuna. Far more sustainable, ethically better, better quality product. Because when you catch one by one, you treat the product better. You have time to slaughter it correctly, ice it correctly, and so forth. Right? And then the minute it enters that supply chain, there's nothing to proving the difference between those two. Yeah. This is tuna and this is tuna.
Absolutely.
That's why we focus so much on traceability. I think we need to provide the tools to to really help the good actors show that they're great actors.
Yeah. How is that still allowed though?
Look, I think they're complex industries. A lot of people ask me sometimes, they said, Fahim, you took on the seafood industry. Why? I said, name me the last undigitized industry. There's very few industries that are undigitized.
Yeah.
Today. Seafood just didn't have a lot of people focusing on it. The blue economy in general, I think, is underinvested. Personal viewpoint. Put my investor hat on. I think we've invested in a lot of industries, and a lot of industries have become very prevalent because of the capital that's flown into them. And I don't think we've invested enough in our oceans. And if you think about ocean-based venture capitalists or ocean-based investment funds, we couldn't count them on two hands.
I think there's one here in the region that I met with who came on the podcast probably around 3 years ago. Not many.
Look, and once again, difficult to ask people to
and it's not ocean, by the way. It's just a climate, like sustainability, climate, etc.
Personally, my mission is the oceans. So I'll be obviously the one to say more people should invest in the oceans. There are other things that need to be invested in as well. But my job is, like with turtles, with the seafood industry, is to help people realize that there are opportunities to do it. We're very fortunate. It doesn't take the huge amounts of capital that it takes to get to the moon. But, before we get to the moon, let's solve some things on Earth a little bit. And let's put some of that capital to work here to help protect the oceans. Because I think for us as humanity, as society, it'll have a more direct impact in the near term.
Yeah. Well, I think saving the oceans is as inspiring as going to the moon. I think we've all seen a lot of documentaries, and we've all seen a lot of horror that is happening. So I think it's an important thing to aspire for.
Yeah, I think we talk about the heroes of the environmental world at the time, right? And maybe this is one of the things that got me into the oceans, right? You think about Sir David Attenborough, right? Mm-hmm. Giving us the natural world on TV. And he was mind-boggling. And his voice is iconic. Yeah. Right? He's an enigma in that world. And then you've got Dr. Jane Goodall, who is somebody I've had the honor of meeting, and what she helped us realize with primates, and how unbelievably, connected we were to these creatures that needed protecting. And she brought that to our TV screens. And for us, much later in life, I'm talking about our parents' generation, had the chance to see these people, showcase the natural world. But the one that usually goes a little bit unsaid, and I think sort of my personal life here, Jacques Cousteau was the person that brought the underwater world. I mean, the creator of scuba diving, right? And Jacques Cousteau was the person that brought the underwater world to our screens. And, today we see images of the underwater world, the deep sea, right? You think about how deep people in areas where sunlight doesn't go, and we see these images. That didn't exist 50, 60 years ago, right? That was just starting. And I think that's why I'm so fascinated by it. I'm so thankful for the work that he did on Calypso, and he took his, ship around the world to discover parts. And I reckon there are still species we haven't discovered, right? I know there are species we haven't discovered. I'm sure there's corners of our globe, in parts of the ocean that have got secrets that haven't been, told yet. And if we continue to work a little bit with our ocean ecosystem and the blue economy, we'll find that there's an abundance of opportunities and to both, create economic success, but also to protect such a vital asset for the country.
I read something. I'm trying to find it about the blue economy. I think it's meant to create something like $3 trillion in economic impact by 2030.
We say that it's the seventh largest economy, right? The ocean is the seventh largest economy in the world, but it is a shared asset. And I think that's where, if we want to get a little bit philosophical and less about Fahim and more about the world, I think it's a philosophical challenge. The climate is also a shared asset. Mm-hmm. And, politics is difficult in those spaces because you're asking people to agree to something that is maybe not necessarily on their doorstep, something that is sometimes very foreign to a lot of people.
And I feel like that's the challenge. By the way, it is $3 trillion by 2030. But that's the challenge. I feel like everything that we get from nature, we take it for free. There's no payment, right? We don't have to pay. Like when you fish the ocean, you're not paying someone something, right? And it feels like nature is subsidized. Like we get whatever we want from nature for free, whether we chop a tree or we catch a fish or we shoot a bird and I feel that this is something that needs to stop, right? And I even read that governments obviously pay around $22 billion in subsidies to fisheries every year so that these fisheries can, get more fish. And I'm sure there's a lot of waste, right, when it comes to fish. I'm pretty sure we don't eat everything we catch.
Yeah, I think that's why I say, quite specifically, buy local first. If we're fishing the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman on the east coast of the UAE as well, let's eat our local fish first.
Yeah.
So that we're not wasting anything. But I think that, to your point, in monetary value, it's for free.
Yeah.
I think the problem that we're facing,
we don't pay for it.
We won't pay for it. Our children's children will pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the challenge. But as human beings, are we inherently selfish?
Our children's children will pay for it because probably there won't be much fish. Actually, another stat I'll share, I'm sure maybe you know it, is by 2050, I believe there's going to be as much plastic as there's fish in the sea.
Yeah, I think those statements are out there to shock and awe. I guess. Yeah, let's ask this really honest question. Imagine somebody has, woken up from a coma after being in a coma for the last 50 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're still as young as they were. They open their eyes and you look at them and you say, oh, welcome back. How's the world?
Yeah.
Well, and then you list all of the problems, right? It's overwhelmed. They would be totally overwhelmed. Luckily, as humanity, as community, as countries, as societies, we can get together and everybody play a small part in, like, as I said earlier, the imperfect environmentalists do a very, very small part.
Mm-hmm.
That takes small changes by every single person every day.
Yeah. Don't
worry about saving the oceans from tracing seafood around the world. We've got that. That's the innovation space. Like, we're doing that at SeafoodSouq. We'll handle that. My ask for you, just ask every waiter where your seafood comes from and tell all your friends to ask. And have the conversations and raise the awareness, right? And whatever you're passionate about, go focus on that, right? If everybody spent a little bit of their spare time, maybe watching a little bit less TV, maybe reading a little bit more about it, a subject they're interested in, and then finding ways to contribute, then, that's the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And coming back to where we started with turtles, everybody asked me to get involved in turtles, right? I set up a hotline in the UAE, 800 turtle. If you find a sick or injured sea turtle, call 800 turtle.
Mm-hmm.
And I set it up, and it's been, I think it saved over about 130 turtles already with just a phone number, right? Because people, when they find a sick or injured sea turtle, now know who to call, and they pick up the phone when we solve it. When I ask people then, they said, how can we help? How can we contribute? How can we, and then I tell them, well, start asking where your seafood comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Or, buy line caught tuna. Or make sure that, all your fish that you're catching is not, net catch, because that's really big harm to turtles. No, I want to show up to a turtle release and release a turtle into the ocean. Well, that's not what it takes to save the ocean. Your Instagram feed is not going to save the ocean. What's going to save the ocean is you making a very small change in your life decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The plastic bag discussion. I've saved a turtle from plastic bags.
Yeah.
In their throat. I had to pull plastic out of a turtle's throat. It's horrific. Do I use plastic bags? Everybody uses plastic bags. Do I use as many as I used to? Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
Do I always have a tote bag in the back of my car? I do. I actually have so many tote bags, I could probably open a tote bag store at the moment with the amount of free ones we get. You also don't need that many tote bags.
Yeah.
But they're small changes, right?
Yeah.
The plastic bags that we use are, number one, always reused.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has given me a plastic bag or in a delivery or something. And number two, when they're not reused, I make sure that they're recycled properly.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what I mean. Everybody just needs to make some small changes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the changes you need to make are not necessarily directly linked to what it is. So yes, if you want to save turtles, buy line caught seafood.
Should there be a tax on natural resources?
You're getting into my political life.
Well, exactly. So you do work in government, luckily.
I think, how do you value something, right? I was an investment analyst before, right? So, let's go to the principles of valuation. You want to tax something.
Mm-hmm.
What is the value of our oceans, like to the world? And
you have a price point, right? That you're selling that fish at.
I have this thing, right? So the world became obsessed with carbon.
Mm-hmm.
Carbon was the be it and end all. Like, if we focused on carbon, it would be fine. Right?
Then you had carbon credits.
Then you had carbon credits, all the rest of it. And I've said this publicly, and for anybody watching that disagrees with me, I'm happy to have the debate, but I'm not saying carbon is not important. What I'm saying is, can you tell me what 1 kilogram of carbon looks like? What it can do is can be modeled in an Excel sheet. Therefore, it's very easy to measure. And therefore, we can create a mechanism to monitor it.
Okay.
Right? And we've become extremely obsessed with doing that.
Yeah.
What is the carbon cost of something? How much carbon are we putting in the air?
Yeah.
Because that's causing climate change. And that's fine. What I'm saying is I can't do the same for the biodiversity of the oceans. I cannot tell you today that I can value the biodiversity of the Arabian Gulf and create it in a financial model to be able to tax it, create a credit for it, a biodiversity credit. People are trying, don't get me wrong.
But you mentioned, the example of carbon credits, right? The idea is that, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you know as well, but basically, you're an airline, you have that much footprint in terms of carbon, and then you're buying these credits and basically somebody is planting trees, right? Or doing something to offset the carbon that you're emitting as an airline.
Yep.
So same thing for fish, right? You're fishing tons and tons and tons of fish.
So are they going to plant trees?
And you can I don't know, do something for the ocean.
And this is exactly where the trade-offs happen. And it's super challenging. I'm not trying to be facetious here. I'm just trying to say that these trade-offs.
Maybe for every ton of fish you do, you have to clean up a ton of plastic in the ocean.
There are people that are trying that, and I do commend them for that. I'll tell you where the issue of trade-offs are and why this is a complex issue. Where I honestly think that we need to create just a better, healthy relationship with our ocean. It's the only solution. I'll give you this example that is extremely difficult and extremely poignant to the point I'm trying to make. I was asked by a government if could we use our traceability audit that we've done for Atlantis and Jumeirah and other leading hotels of the world. Could we do it to encourage local sourcing?
Yeah.
From the hotels. From one of the local governments in the UAE. And I said, why are you concerned about this? And they said, well, because of the carbon cost of shipping all of this fish that we import.
Yeah.
We fly in. So I said, is the UAE's local fisheries completely regulated in terms of transparency and digital tools and local catch? The short answer is no, but we're getting there, inshallah, with the UAE government. And they said, well, not exactly. But I said, then I can't do the project. And they said, why? Well, I said, because to reduce the carbon cost for some local hotels, you're going to overfish our oceans. If you're so worried about carbon, let's buy more local fish and import less, because that way then, we reduce our carbon cost. I said, yeah, but then you're increasing your consumption on the Arabian Gulf, which if not monitored across the entire Arabian Gulf is unsustainable. So what's more important, 1 kilo of carbon or the biodiversity of the Arabian Gulf? Extremely challenging question. I don't have the answer. I'm not trying to pretend like I do.
So you don't want to fix something and ruin something else in the process.
That's the world of trade-offs. And I think when we work with ocean conservation, I dive into the water and I save one turtle. Right? Is it going to change the world? No. Does it make me sleep better at night? A little bit. But I did my little thing.
Yes.
To help that day. And if everybody does one little thing. But that's what you're asking
us, right? You told our audience, you don't have to be perfect, right? You can just do these little things, these little changes.
Correct. And those little changes will allow our oceans to heal, our planet to heal, and create maybe just a little bit of a different contract that we have with the planet today, which is what you were alluding to, right? We take everything for free. Okay, well, if we can't charge it or governments can't regulate it, then we as consumers, as human beings, can maybe change the relationship we have with the planet a little bit. Maybe personally write a different contract.
But I think that's a tall ask. I don't know. I think of late, I don't know if it's age or basically what's happening around the world these days, but I feel a little bit more pessimistic about the good nature of people, right? So I think to expect that the individual or the company owner who's out for profit will do the right thing, I think that's a tall ask. I feel
it is a tall ask. I think you get cynical as you get a little bit older. You and I are the same age, and why I'm not worried is if you and I were to look at our parents, their level of environmental awareness was nowhere close to what we are today.
Absolutely, that's true.
And if I look at my kids, I have 2 boys. And when I see them walking up and they pick up plastic off the floor and they put it in the bin at the age of 7.
Yeah.
And I said, Baba, what are you doing? It's dirty. And he said, no, Dad, to save the turtles.
Yeah.
That's what gives me hope. So yeah, it is a tall ask, but I think that tall ask needs to be asked. And I think with time, we'll get to a point where we are questioning our relationship
Yeah.
with the planet. We wouldn't get as far as we are today if it wasn't for us testing that conversation and testing that contract that we have with the planet.
Yeah.
And the more we work towards it, I think the
I
better
think,
we
look,
are.
I think, the local fisherman who's going out on his little boat and fishing to eat, feed his family, and maybe sell a bit more fish, etc. I mean, no one has an issue with that. I think the issue is with these massive companies that go out there and, take out tons and tons of fish. And
yeah, look, let's take that to another level of, where have certain industries reached tipping points, right? I'm fascinated by the tourism industry, absolutely fascinated by the tourism industry. You see countries around the world now saying, like, let's limit the number of tourists that come because this is no more, no longer sustainable. In Barcelona recently.
Really?
Yeah, Barcelona, there was a big discussion.
Bhutan, actually, I was looking to go there, and like you have to get a
limit, yeah.
Yeah.
And those are industries that are being put to that brink of I think the people of Barcelona are the ones pushing back a little bit on how their city has evolved with the amount of tourism there. Do you know the studies that say that we lived more sustainably before? The community living was far more sustainable. I think that's the principles that I work with, right? So I will go to my local fisherman or local fishmonger, Muhammad, and I'll speak to Muhammad and I'll say, hey, Muhammad, what's come in that's fresh today?
Yeah.
And I'll buy the local fish. And he said, this has come from here. And I said, I don't want any of that. Like, let me buy the local fish. Because at least the money that I spend goes towards, a local fisherman. And if he's caught that's not going to waste.
Yeah.
And at least then, it's a little bit more of a healthy relationship. And if everybody was to do that, we would have a little bit more, just say, balancing along that relationship with the planet.
How do you balance all of this with your work in the government?
Been asked that many times, with difficulty. But
so you work on international relations, right? So you're
the chairman of government relations of Sharjah, co-founder and co-CEO of SeafoodSouq, the Turtle Sheikh.
The Turtle Sheikh.
But most importantly, I'm a husband and a father to 2 kids, and a son and a grandson and a friend. People ask me quite often, how do you do it? How do you manage the time?
Yeah, because you must travel a lot.
I do travel around the world, which is maybe the biggest privilege for me to see why ocean conservation is so important. Because if I'm, at a coastline anywhere in the world, the challenges are the same, right? And that inspires you to think, wow, I can solve for a global problem from the UAE, right? The stuff we were talking about here in the UAE is not only the UAE's issue, right? It's a global problem that needs to be solved. And that inspired SeafoodSouq. I can be valuable, right? And you as a mother, I'm sure you're also thinking to be inspirational to your kids, right? And for me, that drives me a lot. You won't see me spending a lot of my spare time doing things that are unproductive. The energy in this country just makes you think, okay, well, got a little bit of spare time here. Let's go down and do a beach walk just in case some turtles have washed up to shore. Or, I was showing you pictures before we started here when, it's a Saturday and, we were having family lunch and I got a call to say, there's a turtle that needs rescuing off the coast. So my wife looked at me and said, what do we do? I said, let's take the boys. And we took our kids on the first turtle rescue all together. I think for me that experience is far better than spending a day at the mall with them. And what they learned in that day of, what it takes, for Baba to save a turtle was a huge, huge experience.
When you're talking to to your counterparts in different governments around the world, is that something that you talk about a lot, the ocean, or is that not on the agenda for Sharjah? Like, what are some of the what's on the agenda for Sharjah when you are having these discussions?
The ocean conservation part is also very much tied to Sharjah. We're the only
Sharjah is big on sustainability.
100%.
Yeah.
We have land on both sides of the coast. Sharjah is a big economy. It's like $45 billion economy, 1.8 million people that live on the east and west coast of the UAE. We have 3 ports, second busiest airport in the country. And His Highness has invested so much in ocean conservation is one. This is where I got the inspiration a little bit from, specifically the Marine Center in Kelba on the east coast. But what is Sharjah's sort of message to the world, and how do we build our portfolio of international cooperation? It's built on a number of pillars, right? So number one, we have a very, very strong economy. Historically, Sharjah has always been about 30 to 40% of the UAE's manufacturing capacity was based in Sharjah. So we have a huge amount of industry We've got, as I mentioned, 3 ports that's run by, fantastic company, largest privately held port operator in the world, Gulf Tainer, where a lot of people leverage Sharjah's, position on the east and west coast to transship products all around the world. Our airline, Air Arabia, I think a lot of people have flown, and if you haven't, you should. Largest standing order, I think, of Airbus narrow-body airplanes in the world because it's growing so quickly. There's such a huge amount of demand for this product. And I think last year we did about 14.5 million passengers out of Sharjah International Airport.
Wow.
So, we're a big economy and we're growing. I think the other things that, Sharjah has been focusing on, or where His Highness and the government, His Highness, has been pushing us to focus on is culture is hugely, known. Sharjah is the cultural capital of the UAE. The number of museums, the opportunities for different cultures to meet and so forth. And I think our cultural programming is something that a lot of people from Dubai, from Ajman, even from Abu Dhabi, drive to go see. The UAE's beauty is that it's proximity, between all of the Emirates. The second one is education, right? We have the largest sort of student body living in one small area in well, it's not small, it's quite big, but in one geographical area in Sharjah University City. So, we have about 45,000 students at higher education in Sharjah, the American University of Sharjah, the University of Sharjah, and so forth. And education for us is extremely important. A lot of people from around the world come here to study. I think I saw statistics recently that there are 5 ministers in the cabinet at the moment in the UAE that are all graduates from Sharjah. Then the last one is innovation. And innovation covers, our industry. Innovation covers entrepreneurship. Innovation covers research, technology that's coming out of these universities. And a lot of what I do around the world today is work with governments and the private sector as well, that are looking for a launch pad into our part of the world, in our region, where they want to bring innovation, they want to do applied research, for their particular product or service. And Sharjah provides a home for that. We complement our neighboring Emirates so well. And I spend a lot of my time for the government playing diplomat at large, so to speak.
In your messaging, you said something at the beginning of this podcast, which is you don't believe in shock and awe, right? For people to get them to do something. So when you're trying to inspire people to collaborate more with Sharjah, what do you say to them? What's your elevator pitch?
I don't have an elevator pitch. My elevator pitch, more than anything, is just come and visit. When you see bycatch, the largest environmental services company in the region, that do maybe a part of the services we need to live, waste management, recycling, and so forth. Sharjah's about 78, nearly 80% diversion away from landfill today in Sharjah.
What does that mean?
So today, when your waste is collected, a lot of waste goes into landfills that ruin our planet.
Yes.
Sharjah, 80% of our waste doesn't go to landfill. Only 20% goes to landfill today.
It's recycled?
A recycled waste-to-energy plant that we built as well. bycatch does the waste management for Dubai Airport, for Burj Khalifa, for Masdar City, is all run by this Sharjah, champion that we have in bycatch. Their headquarters have now become world famous because it's the most beautiful building. The bycatch headquarters done by Zah Hadid, Allah yarhamha. So the focus there in Sharjah is come and visit. Right? The elevator pitch is super easy. When was the last time you were in Sharjah? I'll put you on the spot.
Not a long time ago, actually. I'm often involved with the programs of Shira.
Shira is amazing,
I think Najla has done an amazing job in getting people there and getting people excited about Sharjah as well.
I think people that live in Sharjah, once again, we're not a small economy, right? 1.8 million people that live there. We're a big city, right? So, people that are living in Sharjah and working in Sharjah, I should invite their friends more often to come and see some of the cultural programming. I think that for me is the first step. Once you come and you see Sharjah and you spend more time there, you sort of realize there are different opportunities. A few friends have recently opened their offices there. They're looking for something a bit closer to the proximity to the universities. So my elevator pitch is, if you want to have a meeting with me, come and let me take you around Sharjah for a day. So I spend a lot of my time with foreign dignitaries, ministers, even presidents of countries at times, in a car, showing them, how magnificent Sharjah is with all its diversity. And it's a fun day out.
Great. Well, I think what you do is very inspiring, and I think leaders don't necessarily shy away from complexity. I think the challenges that you're working on are complex ones. Sustainability is a very big challenge, and I think the solutions can be messy. But you work on it with creativity, with clarity, and I think that's very inspiring.
I will say,
and it's important.
Thank you, but it's not me. I have maybe the recurring theme throughout this discussion has been this idea of privilege. The privilege that I have as well is that I work with fantastic people. My colleagues in the Sharjah government, my team at SeafoodSouq, my colleagues there, my support at home, my wife and kids. If you work with really great people, then you can do really great things.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap with a few rapid fire questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. But this has been very enjoyable, Fahim. Thank you so much again for coming here. 6 quick questions. How do you manage stress?
Breathing.
If you could have dinner with a personal hero of yours, who would it be?
Jacques Cousteau.
What is the one thing you can't travel without?
Music.
What is your favorite ocean creature?
The sea turtle.
Yeah, that shouldn't have been there. The best piece of advice you've received?
Can I quote a film?
Yeah.
Actually, no. I will give you this. Best advice I've ever received. Don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent.
Okay. And dream vacation destination?
That I've been to
you
or
cannot
haven't
say
been
Sharjah.
to. No, that I have been to or I haven't been to.
Whatever.
New Zealand.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's
you,
been a really, really pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Conversations with Lulu with Sheikh Fahim. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to know more about SeafoodSouq, you can visit SeafoodSouq.com. As usual, don't forget to visit conversationswithlulu.com to check out all the other episodes, and make sure you are subscribed wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. Make sure you leave us a rating and a review. It really helps in getting the show discovered. And don't forget to share this podcast with family, friends, colleagues, and whoever would benefit from this content. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.